let's get into Road to UFC semifinals. I haven't really covered this a whole lot in my social media just because I had a lot of things going on. It's a really crowded weekend. Kind of been focusing on UFC Singapore a little bit more. But I do want to go through these and just offer up some picks that I have. I actually wrote down these picks as soon as the opening round was over to kind of like, since as those fights were kind of fresh. So for flyweight, we've got Jinyu Shiryev fighting Choi Sung-gu. That is a really interesting fight. And I think most people probably siding with Choi Sung-gu there. And I'm like tempted to pick Jinyu Shiryev here. Just like if you were to ask me, what's one upset from these Road to UFC semifinals that I feel the most confident about, it would be Jinyu Shiryev beating Choi Sung-gu. Jinyu Shiryev has pretty good wrestling and a really solid top game. Choi is pretty good everywhere, but doesn't really stand out in one particular area. And like we saw when he fought Sumit Kumar, like Sumit pressed him really hard in his wrestling and was able to get Choi down on occasion. So I wonder if Jinyu Shiryev might be able to. He's got a lot of tape on Choi. He's fought so far 4 times, each fight going to a decision in Road to UFC so far. So he's got a lot of tape on Choi and a lot of great support with the UFC PI in Shanghai. So I'm like forcing myself to pick one upset from this whole entire event, and that's my upset is Jinyu Shiryev beating Choi Sung-gu via decision. The other flyweight fight, Mark Klomako fighting Ray Tsuruya. I've just seen more of Mark at a high level, and Ray is absolutely like one of the best Asian prospects right now. He absolutely could win this fight, but I just feel a little bit more comfortable picking Mark Klomako. I think he's a little bit more technically sound everywhere, and so I'm going to side with Mark Klomako there, which would set up a Klomako versus Jinyu Shiryev finale in my picks. Bantamweight, I think Shuya Kamikubo should beat Xiaolong with not too much difficulty. Xiao, almost like Choi Sung-gu, is one of those guys that is good everywhere but doesn't really stand out anywhere, whereas Shuya is a really good grappler. And sometimes we've seen Xiao taken down in the past and put on his back. So I think Shuya should win this fight. So bank on that. And then Dar Misi versus Lee Chong-ho. That is in a lot of ways, a pretty tough fight to pick. Dar Misi before this fight or before this tournament had flown pretty under the radar. Not for me though. I knew how good he was. Maybe I'm just biased having watched more of Dar Misi's fights and knowing how good he is, but I side with him in this fight. Although Lee Chong-ho, it's hard to say, like his opening fight, it was so hard to know to really like give that a solid grade, because I think he fought the weakest fighter in the whole tournament in Ron Rudra. So like, yeah, he looked really strong, but fighting the weakest guy in the whole tournament. So how much stock do you give that? I feel a little more comfortable picking Dar Misi here, although Lee Chong-ho, definitely a really strong opponent. That one's hard to pick. So with my predictions, that would have you with Shuya Kamikubo fighting Dar Misi in the bantamweight finals. For featherweight, we've got Ija fighting Kim Sang-won, and I'm picking Ija here. At this point in the tournament, hard for me to pick him, to not pick him against really anybody. His wrestling is lights out and his grappling is lights out, and I think he's going to be able to dispatch of Kim pretty well. Although Kim did have a really surprising and impressive knockout in his opening fight, so that was pretty good. The other featherweight fight, Lee Kai-Win against Kuya Kondo. I'm picking Lee Kai-Win here. Kuya, like he looked okay, just kind of like barely slipped by Ibugula, but Lee Kai-Win, I think, man, he's another great prospect. We'll see if Kuya is able to grapple with him much, but I think Lee Kai-Win, pretty physical guy. I think he's going to have answers for everything Kuya Kondo has. I think he's going to get this fight by knockout. So, man, what a great, if this featherweight finale happens, which I feel more confident in this one happening over any other of the weight classes. Ija versus Lee Kai-Win. It's a really great fight. Although both those guys do right now train at the UFC PI in Shanghai. So that would be kind of a teammate versus teammate fight. So one guy would probably have to not train at the PI for that. At lightweight, we've got Rong Ju fighting Kim Song-wook. Picking Rong Ju there. He's just a way more proven guy, fought in high quality competition and looked really, really sharp in his last fight. And then you've got Shin Haraguchi fighting Bate Bol. I'm gonna lean towards Shin Haraguchi here, although Bate Bol is one of those guys that is really, I feel like, commonly slept on. He is getting better and better in each fight, and I thought he looked pretty good in his last fight, and I think he could surprise some folks with how good he looks in this fight with Shin Haraguchi. So this fight is harder for me to pick than maybe it is for a lot of people, but Shin Haraguchi really is one of the best prospects in this tournament in all of Asia as well. So I'm gonna pick Shin Haraguchi here based just off of what I've seen, but yeah, I think his wrestling is gonna win the day here. So with those picks, that sets up Shin Haraguchi and Rong Ju in the finals, which would be amazing. Which I realize, like, I know my Korean MMA fans are going to be mad at me because that leaves out all the Korean fighters, which makes me a little bit sad if that's the case, that we don't get any Koreans in the finals. But Choi Sung-gook, really good chance. Kim Sang-won and Kim Song-wook also could definitely punch their way there. So would not be surprised about that.